as I was saying, Joy Taylor, every dog has its day. And since I'm a big dog, I've got 2 days. Okay. So now.
You just called yourself a dog?
Yeah, I'm a dog. Yeah, I'm a big dog, a big one.
Kevin Durant is 6'11", who can pull up from 40. Okay. This brother is on that level. I'm talking about offensively.
Do you think you're better than Darrelle Revis is right now?
I'm better than you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Lowdown Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Brown, as always, and this is also going on my YouTube channel called The Mark Brown Show. So check that out. It's going to be here pretty soon. And I have a very, very special guest on the show today. His name is Caron Butler. He played in the NBA for over a decade, played for several teams, and now he's an analyst. He has a book, and he recently won a Capital Emmy Award for his recent documentary this past weekend. So a lot of big things, a lot of accolades behind his belt. Caron Butler, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. My day just got better since you're on here, you know. So this is pretty cool. This is a really good opportunity, as a matter of fact. I mean, I was glad that you were able to have time to do this, and I'm ready. So starting off, you came from Wisconsin, Racine, Wisconsin, if I pronounced it correctly, right? So could you inform us how your journey to the NBA? So going from like high school, college when you were at UConn into the league.
Oh, man. It originally started, clearly, as you just touched on, Racine, Wisconsin. But I think take it a step further, there's layers to that. My family migrated from Columbus, Mississippi. My grandmother, being the matriarch and the patriarch of the family, brought her 7 children up to Wisconsin, which is predominantly a white state, under, 8% population when you think about minorities, black people. She worked on assembly lines at J.I. Case for over 25 years, worked at Ocean Spray for over 25 years. And, what I was exposed to, from that standpoint was strong women in my life. I never had strong men, strong role models as a youth. And what I was exposed to it for the second that I jumped off the porch was activities of what you see in grassroots communities, whether it's drug sales, whether it's slanging, carrying, whatever, you name it, we seen it. And it became a consistent and norm. Fast forward through that process, myself, I found myself, I know the new word is entanglement. I found myself in an entanglement in life, where I was battling those demons. And I was incarcerated. I went to Ethan Allen, a correctional facility. I got out, afforded myself an opportunity to go to prep school. Ended up going to prep school, earned myself a 4-year scholarship to the University of Connecticut. From that point, was awarded a draft selection by the godfather of the game, Pat Riley, Miami Heat. And he gave me an amazing opportunity just to come to the NBA and do all the things that I was able to do and transition into this point in life where I'm at now.
Man, that's a powerful story. And then I guess that alludes to your documentary. It was called Seeing is Believing, correct? And it's going off that. So it was about your important lifestyle that you had, the lifestyle that you had, you said you were incarcerated. So it led from that to becoming to the NBA. So talk about dreams coming true, right? And, you hit rock bottom when you were a teenager and you worked your way towards, becoming an NBA, a player for the National Basketball Association, which is a huge takeaway that you get to have in your lifetime that many people can't say that they've done. And the fact that you played in the league, not only for the Miami Heat, but for several different teams with several all-stars, some of the best to ever do it, and knowing that you won a championship with the Dallas Mavericks as well. I mean, that list is it's a long list. And the fact that you did that, you came from, nothing to something. And that's a huge takeaway for kids, for kids that are athletes right now, these young student athletes that are working their way towards to, becoming, future NBA players. So just going off of that, how did it feel to win a Capital Emmy Award for your documentary, Seeing is Believing?
Well, I think it goes to all the things that you touched on. You think about the recycled behavior, for years, and the trauma that goes unaddressed in, Black communities, brown communities, Latinx community, people of color. And to get to the point where I felt like when I went to jail, I was rehabilitated. I addressed some traumas that, I needed to address to be a better version of myself. And I thought about the people that was most important to me in my life. I didn't want to disappoint them ever again, so, I put my best foot forward and I stayed consistent in that space. And I want people to understand that, all the things that I learned in sports, whether it's about being determined, dedicated, disciplined, whether it was being consistent in my craft, learning how to play the lead role, knowing how to be the second man or the third option, or even to the last man on the bench, waving the towel. Those components of the sports that I played in, particularly basketball, helped me in life. All those things and those qualities I took with me in life in my second act. And, you touched on winning the Emmy, all those things that I reflected on in that moment because, myself, good friend, my brother, God rest his soul, Kobe Bryant, he inspired me to go down this path to go into storytelling, to inspire the next wave. And I think that's real legacy right there when you're inspiring other people through your testimony and through your life in real time to be a better version of them. And I think that's what it's all about.
That's extremely well said. And, huge shout out to Kobe Bryant, by the way. May he rest in peace along with his daughter and those others that were on the helicopter back in January. I know that's a tough loss right there. But moving forward, so when you got drafted back in 2002, it says you were a lottery draft pick, like you said, with the man Pat Riley, the godfather of the NBA, what you call. And so during your tenure at Miami, so how did it feel whenever you first landed into the league 18 years ago? And how did it feel just like, getting a good feel for it and playing with some, wonderful teammates of yours?
You know what? It was I don't know, man, because, Pat Riley was different. People don't understand, like, you don't get the name of the godfather of the game or a guy that you cannot tell the story of basketball without mentioning, without being different. So, like, that experience was just that. From a conditioning standpoint, you had to be in the best condition of your life. He held you accountable, like all those things. The attention to detail from a film standpoint, that was trying. I had Eric Spoelstra and Stan Van Gundy, my rookie year, Bob McAdoo and all those guys. It was a trying situation. It was a dream come true, but at the same time, I knew that the work, was yet to be done because I was just at the surface level. I made it. But to sustain, I knew that it was going to take a ton of work. And I learned all those things on longevity in this space through the Miami Heat and Pat Riley.
And, going off of that, because you came in, that was back in 2002, and then you played all the way until 2016. So throughout that time in the league, would you say the pace of the game, would you say that it elevated from 2002 up to, like, maybe say the early 2010s to the mid 2010s? Do you think the game elevated in the way you think the athletes were a little bit quicker and faster as they were when you first started?
Yeah, I think the systems was different. It used to be more half court, slow grind basketball. And you know that because, the hand checking and everything, like the arm bar was in. Like, you used to literally be able to hold someone by the waist like this with a bent arm. Think about some of the playoff series, in my lifetime when I grew up watching the Knicks and the Bulls and things like that in the Eastern Conference where, you had guards like Anthony Mason. Anthony Mason was a huge man, left-handed. He's guarding Michael Jordan because he's able to have a firm grip on his hip and he's able to guide him. I saw the evolution of that being taken out where the hand checking was taken out and then the pace of the game did change because the sets went from half court to a little more, space and pace, in the game. So that changed drastically. And then I think what really changed and redefined the game was this undefined positions. You think about guys like Dirk that came in the 4, Kevin Garnett that came at the 4 position, guys like Kevin Durant that played anywhere from the 2 to the 1 to the 3 to the 4, even 5. He couldn't guard 5s defensively, but he was playing it sometimes with small lineups. So you take those type of scenarios and those situations, like, man, the game just kind of really broadened and opened up.
And it was going off, you mentioned Dirk, you mentioned Anthony Mason, like during your time period. So when you grew up watching basketball, would you say you were, because like this actually alludes to this point I wanted to bring up. So we know that the Last Dance documentary, it aired back in April and May. And so going off of that, would you say you were inspired by players like Michael Jordan and those guys, like the top tier players in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, of course. It's crazy. We saw the vault back in 2000. I was a rookie, 2002. We saw the vault. They opened it up, and we saw everything that you guys are witnessing now with The Last Dance. That project was already ready back in 2002. So we was exposed to it. Our rookie class saw it. I was just like, whoa, like we had to wait almost 20 some years to see that. But it was amazing to see. And, I think that, in real time, man, it was just something to watch because the game has evolved so much. Guys that I idolized watching growing up, I think that the Bulls, when you think about the Pistons, Magic Johnson, I caught him on the tail end of his career. But it was just a Michael-dominated era, from when I can remember, just all I can remember from a basketball standpoint growing up. Michael Jordan Playground, Space Jam, Rare Air, all those things. Like, Michael dominated all the airways when it comes from the sports and the basketball component.
Oh, yeah, he really did. And then, a lot of critics are saying that Michael Jordan did a lot of trash talking when he was on and off the court. And then you saw how he would do it. I mean, in The Last Dance, one of the funniest memories I had from watching The Last Dance was when Gary Payton was talking about how he slowed him down. And then Michael Jordan just looked at the iPad, just started laughing. It became a whole meme on the internet. It just came, like, he laughed twice. Like, he busted. I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, I never got a chance to really see Michael Jordan play. I saw him when he was playing for the Wizards, and that was during this, like, bottom ladder of his career. He only had, like, maybe 2 to 3 seasons with them, and he was much older then. But just seeing him look at that iPad and start laughing, I don't think I've ever seen Michael Jordan that happy. I don't think I've ever seen him, like, just crack up like that on national television. That was hilarious, man. Like, the way that he was, because Gary Payton felt like he actually became a problem for MJ, and MJ just laughed at him.
GP, that's my OG, man. But Gary, he and you have to feel this way. I mean, he think he can stop anybody. You know what I mean? But Michael, to put that in perspective, just sitting and looking like looking at the iPad, no, that ain't what happened, bro. You know what I mean? Like, because think about it. I remember this story. I got to tell you, I was with the Miami Heat, and Keith Askins he was the assistant coach. He played for a long period of time for the Miami Heat, and he had came and he was like, I used to guard Michael Jordan. I used to lock him up. And I was like, damn, like you was locking Jordan up? Like, yeah, I did a great job on him. Shit, he only averaged 45 against me. But shit, he had to earn all 45 of those points. And I was just like, 45? Like, he averaged 45 on you? But that's like, from a psychological standpoint, that's how great Michael Jordan was. And for you to really work as hard as you possibly could, and he only had 45 points, that was like a hell of a takeaway for you as a defensive player.
It really is. And the fact you said 45 points, ooh, man, that is up there. We're witnessing that in the bubble right now. We're seeing some players, get 45 points or more. It's like, a handful of them right now that we know. We'll get to that in a second. But the fact that I feel like Michael Jordan is, like you said, he did change the game, because if you look at the game today, there are so many, like, big-time scores, all-time scores that we're witnessing right now in front of us with the bubble. And within the past 15, 20 years, we've seen a lot of players that emerged after the Jordan era. So, and then, Kobe was obviously one of them. Once Kobe got drafted in 96, and, just a few years into his career, he became a dominant force that nobody could be stopped by. And then he was also inspired by Michael Jordan. We saw him on The Last Dance as well. So the fact that Kobe came in and became so dominant, and then, Shaq eventually joined the Lakers. He got not drafted, but he got traded to LA, 4 years after he was in Orlando. So to see that Kobe became the man that he was, especially the dominant force that he was, one of the greatest to ever do it, tells you something. And then he said he got that from Jordan. He asked him a lot of advice, and then he revealed that on The Last Dance. And that's just incredible how he impacted so many players. And even LeBron, too. LeBron was a huge fan of Michael Jordan growing up. So the fact that, and we're seeing how dominant LeBron has been the past 15 years, and it's 15 to actually 17 years if you think about it, because when he was a rookie, he was already becoming dominant. So it's just crazy how we've seen one person, how much of an impact he's made on the future generation of players.
I mean, how can you not be impacted by those before you? Like, the greatest players ever to play the game of basketball. And I think that when you're talking about legacies and redefining and having your own legacy, you're chasing ghosts. So, you know, Michael Jordan was chasing Kareem and Magic and all the accolades that came with them, Larry Bird and Oscar Robertson, and the list goes on. And I think that when Kobe and Shaq and Tim Duncan and, you know, the list goes on of individuals that came behind that next wave in that era, they was chasing the ghosts of those guys and the legacies. And I think that, you know, after that, you know, the LeBrons, the D-Wades, and guys like that, to that stature, they was chasing those ghosts. So it just continues, and I think that's the evolution of the game. And I love to see, you know, guys evolving and chasing those numbers from a statistical standpoint. It's fun to watch. You know, you see Dame and what he's doing. You know, I think that when I saw some of the graphics and him being compared to Wilt and the only person to have done this since Wilt Chamberlain and things like that, that's just mind-blowing, because seeing Dame participating in the bubble and doing that from a guard position, tough to do, bro. It's really tough to do because you're not physically dominant or more dominant than the pack. So to see what, you know, Kobe's done from a scoring standpoint, Michael Jordan, to see Dame, James Harden, that's some special things that we're all witnessing right now, and we shouldn't take them for granted.
Exactly. That's also well said. And, you know, going into, you know, further into your career, I mean, you played with so many All-Stars yourself. Like, you played, like, for example, your time in Dallas. Like, you were in Dallas briefly, and then you got a chance to win a championship ring with those guys. So how did it feel to be playing with Dirk Nowitzki, Jason the Jet Terry, Jason Kidd, all those guys? How did it feel to become of that championship team? You
know, I played with Dirk, as you touched on, and Jason Kidd, the reclining legend is what I used to call him. Jason the Jet Terry, man, Sean Marion, so many great players. And most importantly, like, there's great people. People talk about winning, and I said, you know, I learned the valuable lesson about winning is that it comes down to sacrifice, but it also comes down to, you know, the unity and camaraderie of, you know, everyone buying into something that's bigger than themselves. And I learned that. You know, I grew up as a human being in Dallas, you know, playing 2 seasons there. I learned a lot about life, and I'm forever grateful for that experience. That right there meant way more than any individual accomplishment that I obtained in my career or, you know, in my life, you know, from that standpoint, you know, being a part of that championship team.
Oh, I bet it was. I mean, that's something that not many people can say that they want to ring. You know, that's another thing. That's definitely an incredible accolade to have under your belt that you can, you know, I would say, you know, flex on and stuff like that. But at the same time, I remember watching that series. I was only let's see, I was 15 years old at the time. I remember watching that series like thoroughly. I watched the entire playoff run, everything. So the fact that Dallas made it that far, because I remember they swept the Lakers that year in the playoffs. I remember you guys swept them, and you guys worked your way towards. And you actually played against Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals that year. And if I remember correctly. And then you guys took out Oklahoma City, and that's when they had a young Kevin Durant, a young Russell Westbrook, a young James Harden, a young Serge Ibaka, all those guys. And you eventually joined that team, you know, a few years later. And the fact that you got a chance to play with not only Dirk and those superstars with Dallas, and then you go into Oklahoma City shortly after that, and you got a chance to play with KD. He was, you know, arguably one of the greatest scorers of all time. And you have, you know, you played with Russell Westbrook at the time. I mean, James Harden was already in Houston by then, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he was already in Houston. So when you were in Oklahoma City, I mean, how did it feel to play with Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka? Even Steven Adams was young at the time. The dude didn't even have a beard. So, I mean, there's actually a photo I saw. There was a photo I saw. It was from May 25th, 2014. And it was you were giving a high five to – it was Reggie Jackson was running towards the back court. And then y'all were high-fiving Reggie Jackson. And I saw Steven Adams in the background. I was like, wait, that's Steven Adams? He definitely didn't look like Aquaman. Like, you know, people think he looks like Aquaman now. But, like, I couldn't see Steve. Like, you saw Steven Adams. I saw Russell Westbrook when he had short hair. I saw Kevin Durant. I mean, that's just incredible. And then you were high-fiving them. And I saw that you were a key contributor for those guys, too, because I noticed, like, whenever I was watching you play, and I saw that you were making some clutch shots here and there, some threes, you making some good mid-range shots, playing some good defense. I'm like, and I was telling, you know, your cousin Quincy, I was like, man, like, you're lucky to have a cousin that cold, man. Like, you know, to be playing in the league. I mean, I'll never forget it telling him that. And because I'm a big-time Thunder fan. That's my favorite team. And the fact that you were playing with them, I was talking so much trash. And that's when Kevin Durant won the MVP, as a matter of fact, too. And I was talking so much trash to my friends. And so how did it feel to be part of that team, especially, because, like, obviously KD, Russ, and those guys had a huge future, a bright future ahead of them because, like, they were, young superstars then, but now they're, like, universal stars.
It was great to see that process. I took a buyout with the Milwaukee Bucks, and I was with Giannis his rookie year. One of the reasons I didn't want to leave that Bucks team is because I saw the potential in Giannis, and I was his vet, and I was like, man, this is a great experience. I'm back home in Milwaukee, my home state. I could stay here and just, kind of play as long as I want. But then I saw another potential and an opportunity to play with all the guys you talked about, whether it's Reggie Jackson, Serge Ibaka, young Steven Adams, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, MVP season, the game transitioning for him. And I was like, you know what? I can play with these guys, potential to win a championship again and do some amazing things. And the San Antonio Spurs reached out, talked to Pop. The Miami Heat reached out. D-Wade hit me, talked to him. And I had 3 selections, all contenders on where to go. And I was just in a tough spot. So I elected to leave Milwaukee. I talked to Giannis. I had to leave. That was a tough thing to do, leaving my young guys, him, Chris Middleton, those guys. But then I passed on Miami. Everybody thought I was going there because of my history and my connection with the organization. I passed on the San Antonio Spurs just because I felt like OKC was the best fit for me and I was needed. And when I went there, that experience was just – it was special because I don't think people understand how committed the fans are to that organization. It gives you and I played with some great organizations when you talk about fan commitment. I played for the Lakers, DC, everything, Miami Heat, the Heat culture and all that. But being part of the Thunder organization, it's just like you're part of the fabric of the community. Everybody shows up, whether win, lose, or draw, they come in, they're going to be supportive. They're all in on their team. And that experience was just, great for me at the time. And we ended up going to the Western Conference Finals and we ended up losing to the San Antonio Spurs. Whereas if I would have chose to go there, I would have had 2 titles. It was an opportunity for me to win a second title. But I was glad I went to OKC because it helped the development of Russell Westbrook, Reggie Jackson, and Steven Adams, and Kendrick Perkins, and all those guys. And I'm still good friends with all of them to this day, so it was a great experience.
That's just incredible. The fact that I'm listening to this, like, right in front of my eyes is just, man, because, like, it's just brought back memories just watching it. But you got a chance to, live it. You played it. You were playing that game. You got a chance to, like, reach out. Like, some of the greatest players to ever walk foot in the NBA. And the fact that you were playing alongside them and the fact that you made a huge difference to yourself, like playing for, several years and with different teams, different organizations, man, talk about leaving an impact on these guys. And I'm pretty sure, like, and I also want to touch on that too. You brought up Giannis. So you play with the young Giannis, the young Chris Middleton, those guys. And then that's also huge takeaway now because I remember hearing about Giannis getting drafted. And, I mean, you look back at those old photos or old highlights, I'm like, man, he looks completely different. It's like a lot of these players look completely different today than they did when they first started. It's just like once they got there, it's like their confidence level just skyrocketed. And to see how, especially with people like KD and Russ, those guys, like you can tell. And then you see Serge Ibaka too. He eventually went to the Raptors, won himself a chip just this past season. So it's like seeing these guys just, blossom into, the players they became is just incredible. And to see that you went from team to team throughout your career, and I'm pretty sure you left a lasting impact on every single one of these guys. I'm pretty sure you were a mentor to them. You said because Giannis and those guys are just, not too much younger than you, maybe about a decade younger or so. And to see that you made an impact on those guys, it just really makes a difference too. So how did it feel to be like a mentor towards like, a young KD, Russ, you said Giannis, Chris Middleton, and all these other guys?
It was interesting because my oldest child is 25 years old. So when I was playing with certain teams, we had guys that was 19, 20, and I'm like, yo, I got kids, some of these guys' age, you know what I mean? So a lot of guys really don't embrace being the OG or the mentor or the mentee. They stay competitive in that space, and that's the edge that you got to have. But I try to take a different approach where I was open to the guys, and I felt like it's just like life, man. You don't know how long you're gonna be here, but the most important thing you can do is kind of influence and impact the life of others. So you try to do that, and I felt like in the NBA, after you get 10 years, I mean, you really playing on borrowed time. It's only a handful of guys that get 15, 20 years, them the unicorns of the game. So I knew that I was playing on, pretty much borrowed time after the 10. And I was just trying to make sure that I left those seeds and wealth of information that I've learned along the way, as a mentor. So I used to just pour into them. It was something that I learned or I seen from Brian Grant, Eddie Jones taught me, Bimbo Cole. I was just like, all right, let me tell DeMarcus Cousins this. Let me tell Rondo this. Let me tell CP3 this. Let me tell DeAndre Jordan. Let me tell Blake this. Let me tell Kevin Durant this. Like, I was doing that in real time, and I think that's why my connection is still so strong with these players, because I went above and beyond to make sure that I poured into it.
And moving forward towards the bottom half of your career when you played for the Kings, so that from what I checked, it was like 2015 and 2016 around that season. So that's around the time that Buddy Hield was a rookie when he got drafted out of Oklahoma. So it's like, did you get a chance to also be like a mentor towards Buddy Hield as well?
I never got a chance. I was actually gone by the time Buddy Hield got drafted or got traded, actually, rather, to Sacramento Kings. So what happened was, when I signed a 2-year deal with the Kings, which was the second year was a player option. And on the second year, I picked up the option, but I didn't report. I didn't play. That's when I started transitioning to being an analyst. But I still was getting paid from the Sacramento Kings. You know what I mean? I had the money deferred. So I think I had like 1.7, 1 point something deferred in that process while I was, doing my analyst stuff. So I missed that whole opportunity of just being there and having that experience with him. But I did have that experience with DeMarcus Cousins, Omri Caspi, and those guys. Rondo, we was there together as well, Ben McLemore. And that was just a great experience, man. And I'm watching these guys now. I'm calling the games. I love what I'm seeing. They're maturing in front of my eyes. And, I look forward to watching them down the road.
Oh, exactly. And then, speaking of that too, because, towards the bottom half of your career, we saw, Paul George emerge from the Pacers back in 13, 14, there in those years, whenever he actually gave LeBron and D Wade and Chris Bosh a hard time in the playoffs. And to see Paul George, emerge into the game, going from there to, Oklahoma City and now with the Clippers. And you saw Kawhi Leonard too with the Spurs at the time. Because like that year that you could have won a second chip, that's when Kawhi was with the Spurs as well. So it's like, you see all these guys become like the face of the NBA today, like the faces of the NBA, as a matter of fact, to be plural about it. It's just crazy how much of an impact these guys have made right now for these young generations, especially for, young analysts out there and the young players that want to, emerge into the game. You see these guys just be dominant, and that just leads to the NBA bubble, how much of an impact these guys are making. And then when you look at that, because you said, obviously, like I've noticed you've been an analyst for a few years now. So how did it feel to transition from being, an NBA player to an analyst?
It was a seamless transition for myself. I seen it be difficult for other people because they don't necessarily prepare themselves for the transition. And if you're not prepared, if you're not informed on all the things that come with it, it can be, trying. So I felt like I did a good job of just seeking out information. Like I did the Syracuse broadcasting program for I did it 2 years. I did it back to back. So I traveled, I went and did that. And then I went to the Harvard Business School of the crossover program that's provided by the NBA. And I completed that that session as well because I wanted to learn the importance of case studies and learning how to trim my thoughts and, how you can articulate talking points and all those things. So when the opportunity presented itself while I was still active, I was asked to host the draft combine. And I knew all the players because I watched college basketball. I have AAU program where I follow the high school kids. So I was familiar with the kids coming in, making that transition. So it was just like a perfect spot to be in for me. And I was just looking forward to that opportunity. And I kind of just was prepared for it. I think a lot of people think that it's simple and easy to just like talk basketball. But you have to also be informed. It's a lot of data out there. It's a lot of research with these players. And in the midst of everything, you want to be able to, amplify the performances or their careers of what you're seeing and talk about it the right way. So, like having just an observation of, oh, he cold. Why is he cold? Like you want to know the who, the what, the when, and the how. So, like, why he cold? Why did that move work? Did you see a cut that went through? So when I talk about basketball, I want people to understand, like, it's like storytelling. And then I want to give you all the who, the what, the when, and the why this play actually happened.
Oh, that's a perfect description. And plus, cause not only you are an analyst, because I noticed there's been a bunch of former players. Like we saw, obviously, you got D-Wade, you got Chauncey Billups, you got Chuck, you got Shaq, you got Kendrick Perkins that's in and out on ESPN all the time. So, I mean, you see a lot of these guys. Ryan Hall's another one. So you see all these guys that are all talking basketball, it's like, going far in depth, as an analyst standpoint, they can also relate. Because I noticed that there's a difference too. Because, when you see analysts like, you see Adam Lefkoe on NBA on TNT, and obviously he didn't play in the NBA, right? But he's like a big time analyst. So I noticed the difference between former athletes becoming analysts to, people who are strictly analysts. I know there's different perspectives. Like for you guys knowing that you guys played the game, and then you guys can obviously envision yourselves on the court playing, or you can just go off the memories that you had when you played, and you can just look at these younger guys that are playing right now, for example, like Damian Lillard going off, TJ Warren having a great time with the Pacers, and then Devin Booker who's just putting up some crazy numbers as well. I mean, you've seen all these guys out there, and then it's like, I feel like from an athlete's perspective, like you're able to describe it in an athlete's perspective. So for all those athletes that watch the show, because there's several, I mean, there's thousands, if not millions of athletes who watch these shows all the time. And then to see you guys out there, you have a voice for the athletes, obviously, since you played. So from your perspective, would you say it's like, do you think it's a complete difference between a former athlete's perspective to, just an analyst? Or is there for example, Adam Lefkoe or any of those guys, do you see a difference between former athletes talking basketball compared to those who just study the game?
Yeah, I think it is, because, some individuals may possess a skill to, actually know exactly how we're feeling or our observation of the game from just watching it for so long. Like Ernie, you think Ernie Johnson and what he's doing and what he has done over years, he's mastered the art of taking the perspective and seeing the game through a player's lens. That's why I love him as an analyst. Where you look at Adam, he's talking about it from his perspective. And then that's what I love about the game is that there's so many different perspectives out there. I may have an observation on something that, Dwayne may not see the same way because from his position, from a guard position, he's like, well, I probably would have just attacked that. And I'm like, well, you can get the same thing done by just swing. And that's the beautiful thing about telling the story of basketball and giving it, from your lenses. And I love that we have so many guys in this space that take their craft serious, where they're not just pulling up and just watching the game on television. They're doing their research. They're watching the team. They're following the stats throughout the course of the season, and then they're giving an educated observation of what they're seeing so they're informing properly. Because what happens now is that, a guy may do a hell of a move and people may say some of the crazy, outlandish things for clickbait. And then now the young audience is drawn into that clickbait. And then they feel like this person is the person that's going to teach them about basketball. But this person may not be the person that's qualified to teach you about the game of basketball because they're just doing clickbait-driven stuff. You know what I mean? They're not focused on skill set. They're not. So I would tell like all fans to, you know, some of the people that you follow or you listen to for information about the game of basketball, do your research. You know, just do your research and make sure you learn it, because some people are clickbait-driven, and then some people are really trying to educate you on what's happening out there on the court.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, because like when you talk about clickbait, I noticed on the internet, like there's a lot of backlash on Kendrick Perkins. I'm like, man, where's this disrespect coming from? But you see, it's not just him, but you see disrespect on just about any analyst out there. There's always somebody, because they're expressing their opinion, right? Because there's debate shows, obviously, if you're on First Take, that's a debate show. So you're expressing your own opinion. Like you see Max Kellerman and Kendrick Perkins go back, they butt heads about, you know, because Kendrick Perkins, because he stands for LeBron, so he calls LeBron his GOAT. And he'll discredit Max Kellerman for saying, like, he'll talk about MJ or all these other guys or even Kobe or something. Like one time, there was a time where Max Kellerman, it was a year ago, where he said that Kawhi Leonard was better than Kobe Bryant, like overall. He said that, yeah. And then so I'm just saying that, like you said, I feel like that has something to do with clickbait right there when you mentioned that, because like when they're just going back and forth expressing their opinion. And I noticed that Kendrick Perkins, you know, he's also a pro James Harden guy as well. And then Max Kellerman going off his, like, you know, his television personality, he doesn't like James Harden. So he'll also find all his flaws and try to expose it to, you know, to use it as like his rebuttal to Kendrick Perkins.
Yeah. You know what? KP, my boy, man, that's my young fella. And I love what he does because he gets people engaged. But in fact, he knows a lot about the game of basketball because he does a lot of research. You know what I mean? And I respect his opinion because he reaches out and he asks certain things and has have conversations. You know, so some guys are the exception. I think that he does a remarkable job at doing a combination of both, where he may say something outlandish because he's never going to not side with LeBron, but at the same time, he's going to still give you an educated opinion on why he feel that way. So I love that about him as well. Like, we've even gone back and forth about, you know, the optics of the game and the who, the what, and what the hell was that about? And, you know, we go back and forth like that all the time because that's my little brother. But I love the fact that he's carved out a space in a lane for himself, man, and I'm proud of him.
That's really good to know, because that also brings me to this question, because, like, the fact that you said when you talk to other analysts, like former players, you say, like, oh, no, he didn't. He said, no, he's not a, you know, all-time shooter. Like, what about this guy, this and that? Like, so do you guys ever have, like, when you mention, like, how you guys go back and forth about certain players or certain teams, is there a time where you guys, like, have, like, a major group chat of different analysts? And how does that all work? So you guys, is it the same as we see on TV, or is it just a little bit different? Like, you guys just go straight to it?
Yeah, you know what? It's this change of, you know, different things. It may be text message or a quick, you know, FaceTime call or whatever the case may be, and guys just, you know, talking about numerous things. You know what I mean? And it may happen rather quickly, or it may be lingered because, for instance, I may feel a certain way about, you know, Dame Dollar. You know, I said that Dame was going to make the playoffs. I said he wasn't going to impose his will on the whole situation. A lot of people felt like the Pelicans had the favorable schedule. So what I do is I just record, like, the screens in the studio of Dame going off, and then I take a picture of, like, the seating in the Western Conference, and then I'll send it on a massive group text to, like, everyone, all my colleagues, and then they'll send something back on why that happened, or this person got injured, or like, you know, so we just go back and forth with our little tick for tack stuff. But it's all informative because, you know, it drives the discussion. You know, everyone's not going to agree with you, but it helps you, you know, and get debate conversations when you're on national television.
Especially, like, you know, especially when it comes to getting old on national television, that seems pretty embarrassing too. Like, say you have, like, a certain take, right, on somebody, and somebody else comes out with another take, and you guys just go back and forth because you guys don't agree with each other. And instead of coming into agreement, you get owned, right? There's times where people embarrass themselves, and that's still, like, I think the one that really pops in my mind is when Skip Bayless, when he used to be on First Take before he went to Fox Sports. I remember Mark Cuban made his way on the show. It was after the Thunder lost to the Heat back in 2012. And I think it was that following day. And Mark Cuban just made it just looked like he made Skip Bayless just look stupid, man. It just he just started bringing because Skip Bayless was trying to blame Kevin Durant on the reason why they lost. And then Mark Cuban came up with this huge take, and then it just went basically it just gobbled up everything that Skip Bayless was saying. And I was like, dang. And then Stephen A. Smith was just quiet. He was like, hey, this had nothing to do with me, you know.
I don't have to say this time.
Yeah, and then just recently, like Skip Bayless was saying something crazy about Damian Lillard, you know, and Damian Lillard called him out on Twitter just yesterday. I saw that. And, you know, maybe a few months back, Mark Cuban, again, like Skip Bayless was like, you know, coming up with his outlandish takes. And then next thing you know, Mark Cuban quote tweets him and says, don't make me do this again, Skip. And I thought that was the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah, you know, first off, people have to understand that these shows are a form of entertainment. So people aren't always authentic. Like, it's entertainment. It's the shows are, not our shows. NBA television is analyzed from a basketball standpoint. It's not debate driven. Like, we can actually have a show where everybody agree. You know what I mean? We're just talking basketball like in an authentic way where it's not like you can't say this person is good because I got to say that person bad. Like, it's not that type of thing. It's not a debate show. Whereas a lot of these shows, it's like, okay, you like Jordan? Okay, he like LeBron. You can't like both. You know what I mean? So now we have to have the debate on live television. Tell us all the reasons why you like Jordan. You tell us all the reasons you like LeBron. And then there's the debate. You know what I mean? I don't like to partake in things like that because it takes away from the energy, but that's what drives, you know, the clickbait. And that's what it is. So I understand that, and that's part of the game, and that's a space that I don't really dive into. I like being part of this authentic discussion about basketball and educating and informing.
That's really good to know too, because I always like that when you actually come to an agreement where you just, you know, appreciate the game, appreciate each player that's made an impact, right? Instead of just like trying to undermine them, right? Everything that they've done. So it's like, I guess that brings me to this. So now with the NBA bubble in progress, like we're just maybe a few days away from the end of the regular season into the playoffs, right? So you look at all these seeding, especially with the Western Conference, it's just been incredible. Like the fact that Damian Lillard dropped 61 points last night against the Dallas Mavericks, that game was just back and forth. I thought Dallas had it in the bag. You know, I thought Dallas had it when Kristaps Porzingis hit that quick three within the last minute left, right? I was like, oh, Dallas got this. And then Damian Lillard hits that clutch shot where it just bounces off from the back of the rim and it goes in. I was like, that kind of reminded me of the shot that Kawhi made last year against the 76ers. And I was like, dang, that was clutch. But at the same time, I had a good feeling he was going to make that shot because that's what Dame does. I mean, whenever it comes to like when it boils down to the end of the game, crunch time, Dame is that guy. I noticed that Dame's been that guy for a while, making clutch shots. He's been doing that since when people first heard of him making clutch shots back in 2014 against the Houston Rockets, where he sent Houston home. And that brings me to whenever Paul George and Patrick Beverly were clowning this dude when they played against Clippers not too long ago, and you see Dame just like, I got a response for y'all, basically. He lets his actions do the talking. That's what it seems like. And I know it's like Damian Lillard, if I was in the NBA, I wouldn't be talking trash to Dame, man. I'd be like, nah, this dude, he's on a different level. Yeah, man. You think about the art of war, and you think about all the things and the methods and the strategies in those books, Art of War, 48 Laws of Power, all those things. And I'll never forget, like, doing that playoff series versus OKC. You have my brother, Russell Westbrook, going hard, rocking the baby, doing all those different things. And Dame was literally coming to the podium and just, being quiet and strategic in his method of attack. And he was actually quoting every press conference something from one of those books. And then all of a sudden he comes out and he knocks down the shot and, the famous bye-bye. Fast forward to now, telling folks to, literally put some respect on my name because I've done some things in this league. And I love the fact that he's been with the Portland Trailblazers for his entire career. He could have been a disgruntled superstar and asked for a trade. He has not elected to do that. I think that he's the
I know they're going to give some awards for participating in the bubble, the early stage. I think he should be the MVP up to this point. It's just remarkable, man, to see his commitment to Portland, to see his leadership to that ball club, to see what he's done away from the game of basketball through his community efforts, and then also, going with his leverage with the team, going to make sure that Carmelo Anthony got another shot at coming back. Man, that just shows you what type of character, what type of person that Dame is, man. So, I'm all for him, man. I never have anything bad to say about a guy like that, because he's embodying all things right with the league.
He really is. And, it's like he doesn't really do that much trash talking himself. Like this guy, if somebody says something to him, he'll bark back, with whether it's with words and definitely by his actions. That's why I also like favorite down. But, man, when you mentioned the shot last year, because me being a Thunder fan, I was like, man, because I'll never forget that. But, that's all said and done. Oklahoma City is a different team now. There's different players on the roster. So that's another thing, like when you look at the bubble now, because, like, there's so many players that have been going off. Like, you got Harden that's been going off, too. You got T.J. Warren that's been going off up to the point where, until they played against the Heat, he dropped under 20 points in that game. But the fact that he's been so remarkable, like himself, throughout the bubble, and then Devin Booker, for crying out loud, this guy's also been playing like tremendous too. He's been putting up some tremendous numbers. They are 7-0 in the bubble. Nobody expected that to happen. And I like how when Chris Haynes off of Yahoo Sports interviewed Damian Lillard recently, and he said that, with them being in the bubble, there's no home court advantage. If you think about it, they're all in the same spot instead of being, traveling road games, away games, stuff like that. So Damian Lillard said there's less pressure. He thinks that anything could happen whenever the playoffs start. He doesn't, obviously there's going to be seeding, but any team can get beaten on any given day. Any team could get a, you can see an upset. But, like, at the same time, say Portland seals the AC, right, over Memphis. Say they do that, then that means they will be playing against the Lakers. And, people are going to say, oh, that's just outlandish. There's no way the Portland Trailblazers can beat the LA Lakers, man. LeBron and AD, they're not going to allow that. People are going to say some stuff like that. But at the same time, like Damian Lillard said, you really never know. And that's why I notice with the entire bubble, I think anything can happen, because I know the Rockets are the 4th seed right now. Oklahoma City's the 5th seed. So say they maintain those positions, Oklahoma City's going to be going against Houston. And to see Russell Westbrook play against his former team for 11 seasons, that'll be a sight to see. And then Chris Paul, he's been incredible too. Like, this dude was obviously an NBA vet, been in the league since 2005. And you got, young players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You got Dennis Schroeder, who's been contributing really well. Steven Adams obviously doing really good in the paint. I mean, I feel like there's so many outcomes. And it's going to be just looking at the East and the West, I feel like this is going to be very entertaining, knowing they're in the bubble. Oh, man, I just can't wait. I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, I think that one of the things you touched on that's, up for grabs is that it's no home court. So you take out everything that everyone's been doing all season long, fighting for home court, no fans, so you can't feed off that momentum. I think that it's a battle of wills. You got to impose your will on the situation. It's going to be interesting to see, like, how people can stay engaged and, compete at the level. That's why you give a lot of, edge to people that's battle tested, people that have been through pretty much everything. But it takes you back to, like, the AAU settings. I mean, I don't know if you grew up playing AAU traveling basketball, but, like, you can be in a gym where, there ain't no fans or there ain't no seating, you know what I mean? And because you're playing at a facility where there's so many courts, you just have the chairs around the court, and that's it. And unless you're the feature game, you're not going to have access to a lot of, seating. So you're just playing against some of the elite competition at the time. And I think that, it helps, guys like LeBron and the Lakers and teams that's a little longer than the tooth, because there's no traveling. You think about in the playoff series, you got a 7-game series. You usually got to go on the plane. Say if the Lakers playing Houston, now that's, 2-hour flight, whatever the case may be. You got to unload. You got to bring your bags. You got to do that. You got to get recalibrated, new environment. But now, somebody like LeBron, he plays in the game. He literally, leaves the court, get in a golf cart. They takes him to the hotel, and he goes to his bed. No mileage, no extra wear and tear, and he gets to, rest up for the next challenge. So a lot of teams have that benefit. You know what I mean? And I think that that's going to be extremely helpful for someone like LeBron and the Los Angeles Lakers.
Exactly. And then, when you look at the Eastern Conference, for example, the Bucks obviously are the number 1 seed right now. So you got Giannis, Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe, all those guys. You got you got Brook Lopez, those guys balling out. And then you got, obviously, the Raptors have also been dominant in the bubble and throughout the season. So the Raptors have been, people are like acting like they're shocked because, obviously Kawhi's not with them anymore, with the Clippers. So you see the Raptors still, it shows that the Raptors can still function without Kawhi in a way. And then the fact that they're the 2nd seed right now, it shows you that they have a lot of potential too. And then the Miami Heat, they've turned a lot of heads too. The Pacers been playing really well. I mean, just to see the East, I feel like that's going to be very competitive too. Like this playoff run is just going to be definitely in the history books, knowing that there's no, like you said, no home court advantage. They're all in a bubble. I feel like this is a once-in-a-lifetime deal.
Well, I think this championship is going to be unique for many reasons because you think about the climate that we're at in America, talk about social justice reform and all the isms that we're trying to deal with in real time. You think about systemic oppression, you think about COVID and being placed out of your home in your cities, being away from your families and participating in the bubble. Now, fast forward to that, I think that athletes are creatures of habit. So when you're taking out your norm and then placed in a different environment where everything is unfamiliar and unnormal, it's going to be a lot of difficulties that come with that. And seeing that these teams have found a way to just immediately get engaged and pretty much pick up where they left off back in March is just astonishing, like to watch. Big ups to them for staying in shape for 5 months and being disciplined. And now I think that it's really wide open. You brought up a number of teams in the Eastern Conference. I think no one had Toronto even as much as making the playoffs. I know I did. You think about some of those names of Van Fleet, and you think about Kyle Lowry and Siakam, his development went from most improved. You think about Nick Nurse and how he's been just remarkable as a coach, adjusting on the fly. A lot of systems are designed for specific groups of talent, but Nick Nurse has done a remarkable job at adjusting on the fly to his strengths and his weaknesses. And defensively, I think that they are top 5 in every statistical category. And the one that really stands out is one-on-one, guarding their positions, isolation basketball. They're top 5 in that. And I think that's where they hang the hat. They outwork you. They pretty much out-rebound people, and they value possessions. And that's why Toronto is like a real threat at winning the championship.
Exactly. And then for the West side, who do you see represents ISO ball the most out of the West?
Well, you think about the 2 teams that live and die by isolation basketball. Immediately, the Houston Rockets jump out just because the aggressiveness from an offensive standpoint with James Harden, and then you think about the dominance of Russell Westbrook and what he does, and then their offense is really predicated on the perimeter guys playing small ball and everyone standing around and waiting on the decision making of those 2 guys. I also think that you get a little bit of that with the Los Angeles Lakers as well, because LeBron player usage, he is the system. He's going downhill, he's penetrating, but guys are moving and cutting and doing a lot of other things. So it's not completely isolation ball, but it's more of player usage basketball. I think that the Clippers will do a lot of it because you think of PG-13 and his style and what he does. Lou Williams with that second unit, with that group, him and Montrezl Harrell, that tandem right there is averaging over 30 points a game just coming off the bench. And then Kawhi Leonard, in the half court, when the game slows down in the playoffs, when you value possessions most, they're going to be, putting him 15, 17 on end, pinch post, logo, those areas, and he's going to, be expected to dominate.
And so who do you have? I know this is a crazy question too, because it's early. We haven't seen it happen yet, but there's a lot of playoff predictions already. There's a lot of we don't know who the 8 seed is yet for the West, but we'll see pretty soon. It's going to be, it's like a 3-way battle between the Grizzlies, the Trailblazers and obviously the Suns, who won 7 straight, they just jumped into the scene. If you look at the win percentage, it's all equal. I noticed that yesterday when the NBA on TNT showed all the win percentages for the West. I'm like, man, these guys are going to be playing arm wrestling until it's actually said and done. And so who do you have coming out of the Eastern Conference, and who do you have coming out of the West? Like, who do you have battling out in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals into the finals?
You know, I think that it's really up for grabs. I think it's wide open for anyone for numerous reasons. Out of the Eastern Conference, I think that Toronto Raptors, the Boston Celtics, and the Milwaukee Bucks, one of those 3 teams from a percentage standpoint have a higher percentage of coming out. Milwaukee Bucks should come out, but the Toronto Raptors are just so good as collectives. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Toronto Raptors or the Boston Celtics coming out representing the Eastern Conference. And when you look at the Western Conference, I think it's going to come down to a few things. That 1-8, I think it's going to be Portland in the 8th spot, and they could upset the Lakers. But I think that it won't be an easy out. I think that LeBron will find a way to impose his will on that series, and they win. I think that the Clippers and the Nuggets are the other viable threats in the Western Conference. But I just know for certain that it will be a victory championship parade, with social distance here in Los Angeles. Just don't know what team it will be yet, but one of the Los Angeles teams will win the championship.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. Because it's kind of hard to doubt either of those teams at this point. And especially like when you touched on the Clippers, man, they got so much firepower and so much firepower on the bench too. That's the crazy part about the Clippers. And to see how well they played, how effective they played all the way until leading up to the bubble and to this point, it's just insane. But like at the same time, I remember like I did not expect now if the Suns, that's the crazy part. Like it's kind of hard, like you said, it's up for grabs. Like it's crazy to see who's going to predict who's in the 8th seed. I would love to see Dame make it to the playoffs, but I would love to see the Suns do the same thing. They said the Suns haven't had at least a 6-game winning streak since 2014. And the fact that that's happened shows you that, man. And then you see, like, for example, you see Draymond Green talking about how he wants Devin Booker out of Phoenix. He wants him somewhere else. He wants him to, a part of a different franchise where they can actually win championships and stuff and actually go deep into the playoffs. So the fact that Devin Booker stepped up, that's another thing. Like him and Dame, those 2 guys have just been slept on for so long, especially for NBA fans to see how well they played. Just shows you that, man, I'm all for it. I'm all for either of them going. And but at the same time, I would feel really down if both of those guys say Portland didn't make it. I'll feel bad for Dame, or if the Suns don't make it, I'll feel bad for Devin Booker. I mean, it's like at the same time, I just want to see one of those guys make it. It's just tough to predict that. But I know you're on a tough schedule right now. So leading to the last question, do you have any advice you'd like to provide for like a young generation of people who are aspiring sports analysts or anybody like that?
Man, just be authentic. Keep that discussion going. And, I think that just make sure you're coming from a real place. I think that what's real cannot be threatened. So when you come from that perspective, that lives long, and it's fun to do the clickbait stuff, but, if you can, stay away from it. But I know that's part of building your following, through the clickbait stuff. So that's part of it, and I understand that part. But, man, do what's true to your heart, you know what I mean? And make sure that you love and have fun doing it. I think that's very important.
Oh, man, I'll definitely keep that in mind. I'm glad that this is recorded so I can always go back and listen to what you said. And, man, at the same time, this was a lot of fun having you on the show, Caron. Like, I really appreciate you coming on. Like, this means a lot to me. Like it's just the fact that I did this and the fact that we spoke for an hour, man, that was a lot of fun. I mean, I feel like we can just go all day talking about basketball. But I know we both have schedules ahead of us and stuff like that. But, in the near future, hopefully I can get you on again.
No doubt, brother. Anytime, man.